Hello, everybody. Welcome into the ACFL YouTube channel. I am not Huday. I'm stepping in for him as host today, SteelBadker. Uh, and we are doing, what is the most important part of every NFL season. It's not people who win or who's in the playoffs or all that nonsense. It's who's going to get the number one overall pick. Who's going to win the prize of the number one pick? Who's going to be the best tanking team? So I went through and tried to pick some games. We're still a little far out, so some of these are going to be a little bit rough. But to start, we will do our honorable mentions for the top 10 and into the top 10 through 5. I had 8 teams go 5-12 and not a single one win 6 games. So maybe a little bit too at the ends. But I tried to do this with a little bit of like how it would go in real life and a little bit how the Madden Sims would go. So Madden Sims, there's not a lot of teams that win like one game in Madden Sims. You have to be pretty bad to win like one game. So I tried to take the games that be close and do the whole Madden thing where teams lose. So the teams that are outside of the top 10 that went 5-12 are the Saints, Giants, and Jags. Then at 10 is the Jets, 9 is the Panthers, 8 is the Bengals, 7 is the Falcons, and 6 is the Broncos. Again, all at 5-12, just tiebreakers determining their order. So now we can get into number 5, which is my Pittsburgh Steelers. Kind of an interesting schedule. It's tough, and it has its like weird points where it could go either way. So our first win that I have us getting is week 2 against the Raiders. Raiders, that game could kind of be a toss-up, but it is home for the Steelers. So kind of an edge there, as well as just a much better defense. So at home, defense is the advantage. And that kind of follows into week 3, where I have us beating the Bengals for a similar reason. We end up splitting with the Bengals, home and home. Just because I think that's the biggest difference between them. Joe Burrow at home versus on the road. And then have us losing every game out. So then we are at week 10 against the Detroit Lions. Now, this is not necessarily for the one pick like I kind of joked it would be. Because I think both of these teams are a little bit better than the 1 and 2. But this is the difference between the tiebreakers, basically, among the lower record teams. The teams that would go 4-13 versus 3-14. So the Lions end up going 3-14 because I have the Steelers winning this game. I just think the defense is just more put together, and even if the offensive line's kind of work in progress, I think the Steelers should pull that game out. And then the last win on our schedule, kind of a little bit of surprise. One I wouldn't have expected going into the year. But that would be the Baltimore Ravens at home, week 18. I think it's kind of them not going all the way in like that puts it, and these division games are always really close. There's going to be a theme of division games being the ones that are the upsets for these teams. I don't see us getting to the Browns in this. I think they're just strong. But the Ravens are a team that I think could be a split. But that's kind of more of a coin toss and kind of a Madden thing too, where Madden's just going to kind of do that sort of thing. So I have them 4-13. The losses that I would feel least confident in, as far as like, that could be a win, that would be week 5 against the Denver Broncos. I think the weapons and that sort of thing could be a difference in that game, but that is one that I could see going that way. It's also a home game, but it's kind of just in that rough stretch. You have a Bengals game going in, so I think that's why I leaned loss, but I could see this being a 5-12 team in that cluster of 5-12 games. And there's a lot of these example games for those 5-12 teams that could end up being 4-13 and into this top 5. So then moving on to the 4 pick, which is the Oakland Raiders. So for the Raiders, I just think that their poor drafting in the past is catching up to them. They have a lot of holes on this team that are very inadequately filled, and I think the coaching has been the reason they've been good as of late. Their division's getting tougher, and I just think that they're not going to be able to have the Madden gods, the simulation gods on their side in these games because their Gruden advantage isn't there. So I have them losing their first 5 games up until you get to the Denver Broncos game. So I have them beating the Denver Broncos. Now, this was, I have them actually sweeping the Broncos in this. I think that they match up okay with the Broncos, and I think the Sam Darnold thing kind of just is a question mark. And I think that they could pull it out. It's just a better team. Their line should be able to dominate up front and be able to run the ball well. I also have them beating the Eagles the next week. The Eagles, kind of self-explanatory. We'll talk about them later. But their last win, their 4th win, was the one that was like, I don't see it. But I don't see this win every year. I don't see them ever competing with the Chiefs, but they always seem to play them tough. They always seem to pull one out. So this is maybe a little less of what I think Madden would do versus what I think. I mean, this just happens. They play them tough. It's a division rival. It's a home game. I think Week 10 against the Chiefs, that could just be a surprise game. But other than that, I mean, it looks like the Eagles and Broncos are their in the Giants, or they're wins that they could get. I have them losing to the Giants the week before the Chiefs. So those could be flipped, and I wouldn't be surprised. But that's kind of where I see the Raiders going. So now, the 3 pick. I mentioned it earlier. The Detroit Lions at 3-14. The difference on their schedule being, again, the Pittsburgh Steelers game. So to start, I have them with a rough start, as you'd expect. They start off 0-7, and then they get their, the favorite game for everybody. It's going to be the Eagles, the get-right game for a lot of these teams. That's their first win right before the bye week. They come out of the bye week to play Pittsburgh, who I did have the Steelers winning. And I think the bye week for them, being situated as it is and having a week to prepare, will actually give them an advantage in this game and kind of work against them. The Steelers have to come off a hard-fought game against the Bears, a very physical team. So you could see the Steelers coming in and not being 100% for this game. And then you could see it being, and this is also from a Monday night game for the Steelers, so working on even a shorter week. So you can see this being a game they could win. So that's the tough part going into this for the Steelers versus Lions. But like I said, on the road against a great defense, I'd give it to the Steelers. Then this one is their division win. They're a team that's they're going to play these teams close. Which one are they going to pull out? I don't trust Kirk Cousins to close games very much. So I think the home game against the Vikings is their win. It's yep, we're going to beat the Vikings at home. It's just, I don't love it, but the Madden simulation part of it, and I think if there was one they were going to steal in division, I would pick the Vikings, but I could see the Bears. I just think the Bears are a better defense. Kind of have their number a little more. And then their last win is the Broncos. The Broncos seem to be losing to a lot of these teams and seeming to be upsetting, but that's just kind of how I think the Broncos are going to be. They're talented, but they're going to be up and down. So I think the Broncos are a hard team to pin down in this. So 3-14, the 3 pick. So now we have another 3-14 team, and their 3 wins are basically exclusive because I think Madden's going to give them more than they deserve, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles. The picture of their schedule I found has a bunch of players that won't be on their roster, and I found that fitting. They're trading everybody. The wins that I have on their schedule is Week 5 against the Panthers. I'm not high on the Panthers in general. I don't think that they've done a lot. I'm actually surprised they didn't end up in this situation. I just think the Panthers have these games where they might match up well, especially defensively with their weapons. They could pull out a couple extra wins. That's probably the one team that's I think the Panthers should have an extra loss, somewhere in there. So, but this was a loss for them. So they lost to the Eagles. So that's their first win. And then they go on a nice little tear where they lose a bunch of games. But this is where they're Week 12 and Week 13, I have them winning both games. I wouldn't be surprised if they win 2 games in their division, one against the Giants, because the Giants are in a weird place, and also just because the division's super competitive. But I had them picked to beat the Jets. And I don't necessarily think they're a better team than the Jets. I think the Jets are a better team with better quarterback play and stuff. But again, it's just that simulation part of it. And it felt like they're going to try to give them a couple extra wins maybe they deserve. But I could just as very easily see them dropping that game and being 2-14 or 2-15, right, with the last team we're going to talk about, which is the Texans. So the Texans, 2-15. There is an element, and honestly, the only reason I have them winning a game at all is because I think that it's going to be like a 8-game suspension for Watson. I wouldn't be surprised if he missed the whole year. And then we're definitely talking about just like Madden giving them a game in a simulation situation. But I think just he comes and plays some this season. Where it is depends a lot on how this goes. So if he comes back after 8 games, the game I have them winning first is Week 11 against Tennessee. It's just one of those things. There's like he's gonna come back after the bye week, and it could just be a game where they play well, and it's just the difference. I don't feel great about it. I actually probably would feel better about their Week 18 because then we know they'd play. But I think that Tennessee has that mid-season lull, kind of like they did against the Bengals too, where it's just like, okay, how'd you lose that game? And I think they play stronger down the stretch. I mean, Derrick Henry's great at the end of the season. So if there was one game that Watson's going to be able to go in and just take one that they wouldn't deserve as a team, it could be this one. This again is if they're even playing. This is trying to be a little more optimistic for their chances here of winning games, and also just trying to predict the Madden simulation. And then I have them actually losing to the Jets. And this is, I believe, the week before that they lose to the Eagles. So you could see this being the game that they take to against the Jets with Watson going off. But I just don't see it happening multiple times. And also, I have them beating the Jags. So their 2 wins are against Tennessee and Jacksonville, both on the road, which isn't ideal. But it's kind of like 2 entirely different seasons. It's like a completely anemic college team, and then, at least we have a quarterback, is kind of how I viewed this, without any real inside knowledge. So could very easily see this being a team that doesn't win any games. I could see the Eagles being a team that wins like 1. Like these 2 teams specifically could be very, very bad. It's just I don't think Madden does that very often. It's rare to see a 1-win or a 0-win team, and I've tried. So I think it's just they're going to give them some wins. Our poll that we did, the polls I did, had the Eagles as the 1 seed, which I totally understand. They're trading everybody. It's just the Texans were already at where they're trading to. So you could see them being flipped. So my order is different, as the Eagles are 1 for the poll, the Texans are 2. And then I kind of talked about this, but the Panthers are actually the 4 pick, and that's the differences, is the Raiders are lower, but the Panthers are the 4 pick. And I can definitely see that being the case. I can see the Raiders with that offensive line and a good quarterback winning more than this. I just don't trust that defense at all. So then that is what I have for our tank predictions for the year. So I have the Houston Texans getting the prize of getting to trade Deshaun Watson, most likely in this scenario, or keep him and try to build a football team from the ground up. Either way, that is what I have. Oh, also worth noting, the Texans pick is top 5 protected on this. So they really need this to pan out this way, because it was just a terrible trade. But also Cincinnati is rooting for the Texans to pull out some more wins, especially not to have Watson miss a whole chunk of the season, because otherwise there's really no hope for that pick conveying. That's top 5. So that is my thoughts, and look forward to hearing from you guys in the Discord server or on the comments.